Hello and welcome to the latest episode here, the two-man power trip of wrestling and the two-man power trip of wrestling's podcasting empire right here, the TMPT feed. I am, of course, your host, JP John Paz, the one-man power trip that runs the two-man power trip. Here on the show, a special feature for Halloween. Happy Halloween, everybody. And when you think of Halloween, you think of wrestling, of course. You think of WCW Halloween Havoc. Right now, we're going to be discussing the event, the best, the worst, and even maybe the most memorable moments ever in the history of WCW Halloween Havoc. We're going to run the gamut here. We're going to talk about everything great about it, everything that sucks. We'll talk about the five best. We'll talk about the five worst, and then we'll mention the five most memorable moments in the history of WCW's Halloween Havoc. Maybe the premiere episode, as Eric Bischoff kind of said it. He took precedent as far as making Halloween Havoc the number one WCW pay per view, even over Starrcade, which was also always known as the NWA's big show, their big Super Bowl event, their big WrestleMania type event. But Bischoff always kind of said it was Halloween Havoc. And when you look at the main events when he took over and going basically until he left, the main events of Halloween Havoc were always huge, prime time, mega main events. You think about it, I mean, Hogan Flair, Hogan Giant, Hogan Savage, then, of course, Hogan Piper. Then it was supposed to be Hogan Sting in 99, and of course 98 Hogan Warrior. So maybe they all didn't work out the way they should have, but they were all primetime, huge, mega main events involving Hogan. Like I mentioned, Flair, Giant, Sting, Piper, Savage, Warrior, also some of the biggest guys in the history of the wrestling business going up against Hogan. So Havoc, maybe to Bischoff, was the number one pay-per-view. But here, we'll discuss, of course, that, and we'll get into that. But two pay-per-views I will not be discussing and will not be bringing up. And maybe they were the worst, and maybe they're definitely not the best, but just going to throw them out there. WCW Halloween Havoc 1999 and WCW Halloween Havoc 2000. Won't be talking about them as much or really at all, just because maybe they didn't have the best or the worst. Just something I want to maybe just skip over. Obviously, Vince Russo, who've been on the show a million times, he was the writer and creator and basically the backstage presence of Halloween Havoc 1999. And then WCW Halloween Havoc 2000, he's gone. He left. So it's basically Bob Mould, Terry Taylor, Ed Ferrara, Bill Banks. They were basically in charge of that show. So we will not be discussing too much as far as those two pay-per-views are concerned. Obviously, Havoc 99 will be very much remembered for Hulk Hogan laying down for Sting. Very kind of odd, very weird storyline. We didn't kind of know where it was going. We didn't know where it was headed. Why would Hogan just do that and lay down? Where the heck was Hogan going after this? And of course, Russo left not that long after that. He obviously would come back, but he left soon thereafter. And then Hogan comes back, and it just kind of was really like confusing, and we didn't know what the hell was going on for that one. Kind of a decent main event, if you will, just thrown together as far as Goldberg and Sting. Good short match, but the only problem is who the hell was the world champion? And obviously that leads to a huge WCW title tournament, which is eventually won by Bret the Hitman Hart at the Mayhem pay-per-view. But Havoc 99 kind of gave us more questions than answers. Sometimes that's good when you're talking about wrestling and you want to keep watching, you want to have more questions. But I don't know if this was necessarily that case or that kind of thing where the questions didn't really lead to any answers and it didn't really lead to anything good storyline wise. It was just kind of a cluster and it left a lot of confusion. So quickly as well here, of course, Halloween Havoc 2000, which was arguably maybe you could say the worst overall Havoc pay-per-view. Havocs were usually pretty good for the most part, or at least fun, or at least thematic, or at least somewhat entertaining. 2000, I feel like the only real thing people would remember from it was the fact that we were supposed to get an evolution of change for Sting. He was supposed to change his character, change his gimmick, change his look. He was supposed to do something. They teased it at the Fall Brawl pay-per-view. And of course, nothing comes to fruition. It could be because Russo leaves between Fall Brawl and Havoc, and maybe that got screwed up. But according to Sting, he was never asked or told or mentioned to him that he was going to have this big gimmick change or that a pay-per-view was going to be, surrounded or wrapped around the fact that he's going to have some sort of gimmick change. So that left a little bit of confusion. Yes, they had the pretty good Jeff Jarrett versus Sting match where they had the many different Stings of all of his career. Surfer Sting, Crow Sting, all these random fake Stings showing up. and that kind of tied into it. But it just really, I mean, it fell short of what we thought we were getting as far as WCW Halloween Havoc 2000. Pretty good match between Booker and Scott Steiner for the WCW World Heavyweight title, but the only kind of crazy thing or not good thing about that is there was no finish. It was just a DQ finish. So we didn't get any sort of closure. And obviously that match would be done again. They would have a rematch at the Mayhem 2000 pay-per-view. And then, of course, won by Scotty Steiner, who wins the WCW World title. But here at this pay-per-view, kind of, again, left a little bit thinking, a little bit let down that there's no finish of one of the main event matches. So instead, we don't get that as the main event. We get the main event as Goldberg and Chronic. 2-on-1 handicap match for Goldberg's career. Goldberg goes over, but just not a good main event, not very memorable. Probably shouldn't have been the main event of the show. Kind of random, kind of weird, kind of strange, but that is WCW Halloween Havoc 2000. And of course, like I mentioned, 99 as well. So let's talk about some of the great Havocs. Let's just run through some of them here. Let's talk about 1989, the Thunderdome Cage, Sting and Ric Flair versus Great Muta and Terry Funk. You have Bruno Sammartino as the guest referee. The big Thunderdome Cage, kind of the precursor, if you will, to the Hell in the Cell. This was a good show. This was the first Havoc in 1989. This was a fun show. This was Road Warriors Skyscrapers, so like just a bunch of fun, cool stuff on there, and headlined by a very good main event featuring for the best in the world, really. I mean, obviously for the all-time greats there, but Funk and Muta as the heels of Gary Hart going up against Sting and Flair, and Sting is doing the kind of tease as far as being in the Four Horsemen for a while there with Nate, and Nate was the babyface. Obviously, that would change in the not-so-distant future, but a lot of teasing as far as Sting and Flair being the Four Horsemen together. Sting does technically become a member of the Four Horsemen not too far after that, so very intriguing stuff here in Havoc 1989. 1990, do you want to talk about some of the bad moments here? Let's start it off. Let's talk about WCW Halloween Havoc 1990. Why? Well, I'll give you a good thing first. So something that I really enjoyed first. So Sting versus Sid Vicious in the main event. I found that to be pretty damn entertaining. You get to see the original fake Sting. We had Barry Windham dressed up as Sting. Sid beats him. We think Sting loses the title. But when you look at it and you're kind of feeding into it and you're looking at it, it is the original fake Sting. And then obviously the refs realize that was Barry Windham, not the real Sting. Sting will then go down and beat Sid Vicious to retain there. So when you're looking at Sting and Halloween Havoc and this pay-per-view and what's going on with the Stinger, I just thought it was really cool that the original fake Sting was all the way back in 1990. But here's another good thing. The Steiner brothers versus the Nasty Boys. Even Stan Hansen versus Luger is good on this card. But Steiners versus the Nasty Boys. Go out of your way to see this. This is a great match. Awesome tag match. You will love it, I guarantee you. The crowd loved it as well. But here's a bad moment here. The Black Scorpion angle. So they're obviously teasing the Black Scorpion. Tony Schiavone in the patented Phantom of Opera outfit, interviewing Sting, talking about the match with Sid, and then obviously bringing up the fact that this Black Scorpion is haunting Sting, and he's trying to destroy the Stinger. It's very, very weird, very lame. It's a poorly done angle with the Black Scorpion. It just never takes off the way it should. It teased of certain things, and it just doesn't go well at all. I just thought that what could have been, should have been, maybe even a rib by Ole Anderson, who's doing the voice of the Black Scorpion then too. It just was a big swing and a miss. Very sports entertaining, more of a WWF storyline than a WCW, and it came up very, very short. If you wanted Sting to really, get the launch, if you really want to strap the rocket, obviously, he's the most popular guy on the roster. Maybe not have a terrible feud with the Black Scorpion mixed in there. Then talk about bad again. We go to 1991. Halloween Havoc, of course, that is the Chamber of Horrors match. When you're looking at the Chamber of Horrors, you kind of maybe have a little bit of a smirk or maybe a little bit of a smile. You might want to laugh a little bit at it, but it is absolutely just a terrible. I mean, it's a cage match with the chair in there, and you put the guy in the chair, and the Chamber of Horrors, if you will. But you put him in the chair and you electrocute the guy, and that's how you end up winning. Just not good, and not a very I don't know, not a very well thought out angle. Just really, really, really strange. Of course, Sting's team ends up winning after Cactus Jack accidentally pulls a switch on Abdul the Butcher, who was in that electric chair, and he gets electrified. And that's how the match ends. And then, obviously, as you see, the explosions going on and everything, and just the pyrotechnics of it, just not good. Maybe fun. When I was a kid, I did enjoy it. I did think it was funny. But looking back, obviously, it's super silly and super weird, and not a great thing. But Sting, Elegante, and the Steiner brothers defeated Abdul the Butcher, Cactus Jack, Big Van Vader, and the Diamond Stud. So a really star-studded match when you think about it. All these awesome guys in the match, just not a great finish there, and not a great idea as far as the Chamber of Horrors match is concerned. Now, as far as another thing that ends up being horrible, which could have been and should have been awesome, is Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal. 1992, the commercials leading up with Jake the Snake Roberts and Sting were just epic. Great stuff, great storytelling, great production there. But of course, then the Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal, where you literally spin the wheel and you pick the match, ends up falling on Coal Miner's glove match, which was absolutely terrible. Just not good at all. Just what I don't know. Just when you're thinking about putting that together and you're Bill Watts and you're booking it, not the greatest choice of a match. Obviously, just terrible. But the feud between Jake the Snake and Sting could have and should have been great. The way they built it up at first was great. Putting Sting, into the chair with a couple DDTs and really, really building up strong. But man, did they miss the mark on that one with the Coal Miner's glove. When you spin the wheel, make the deal, could have been a first blood, could have been many different things, but it lands in the Coal Miner's glove, and we get a so main event with a horrible gimmick attached to it that you almost can't really make it a good match because you're trying to climb the pole to get the Coal Miner's glove, and then the Coal Miner's glove is such a 1970 style gimmick where you think it's going to knock somebody out. Just, I don't know, very, very lame stuff there as far as the Coal Miner's glove. So 3 years in a row and 3 kind of huge misses there. Just not good as far as Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal, Halloween Havoc. So memorable and so cool. And I love how they're doing it thematically, like 1990, like Scorpion fits into Halloween, obviously. The Fake Sting fits into Halloween. And 91, the Chamber of Horrors definitely fits into Halloween. The Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal, and the commercials and the way they were building up at Jake the Snake Roberts really fit into Halloween. But then to follow it up with the Coal Miner's glove was definitely a swing and a miss for sure. There's no doubt about that. 93 is one of those things where it's going to be, obviously, here we go with Vader, Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal. Look how cool that looks, and the gimmick is cool, and just being able to do this production-wise is very cool. But this one, I would say, was a huge success, a huge win, while 92 was a huge miss. So it seems like they kind of made up for it, if you will. I mean, they were kind of correcting their mistake with as far as the main event and the Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal. Really cool. Texas Death Match, Vader versus Cactus Jack, ends up being main event in an awesome match. Of course, Vader wins, and he defeated Cactus Jack. A little bit of help from Harley Race, but great main event. Go out of your way to go see that one. Just tremendous stuff. But I feel like they really made up for it from the year before, where Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal 92 ended up being a terrible gimmick match. This was awesome. I mean, you can't miss with a Texas Death Match with Vader in his prime against Cactus Jack, who was bumping like crazy for him, and they really did some cool spots and really, really hard-hitting match. But just in general, Havoc 93 is pretty loaded. Of course, maybe not the first match, Ice Train, Charlie Norris, Shockmaster defeating Harlem Heat and the Equalizer. I mean, that is what it is. But then you get Orndorff versus Steamboat, Lord Steven Regal versus Davey Boy Smith, Dustin Rhodes versus Steve Austin, the Nasty Boys against Bagwell and Scorpio, Sting and Sid again at Havoc, Rick Rude versus Ric Flair, and then, of course, Vader, Cactus Jack. So kind of a big-time stacked card as far as I'm concerned, and that's definitely a win, which we will hear about the top 5 for sure from those guys later on. So next up, 1994, and I got to be honest, 1994 maybe could have been a bit of a mess, but the main event definitely makes it a hit. Definitely makes it good. Obviously, Vader and the Guardian Angel, aka the Big Boss Man, good stuff there. The Nasty Boys against Funk and Buckhouse Buck, I enjoyed that. Enjoyed Dustin and Arn Anderson. Maybe Duggan and Steve Austin. I absolutely hated the finish, but it is what it is as far as that. Pretty wonderful versus Stars Stripe, not bad. But the main event of the show really, really saved it, and it really did carry it. Not to say that it's going to end up in the best, but it could, and that is, of course, Hogan and Flair in the retirement match in a steel cage. Mr. T will be involved. He'll be your special guest referee. Sherry Martel will be involved as well. This was excellent. One of the best matches, obviously, best match of the night by far to me, and one of the best matches between Hogan and Flair that they had. They're making up for maybe what WWF screwed up on and not being able to capitalize on Hogan versus Flair, but WCW capitalized it, and they did it great. Hogan, of course, defeats Ric Flair in the steel cage and ends, so we think, Ric Flair's career, and Flair goes off into retirement. Not so fast. Obviously, Flair does come back and continues a feud, but it's just one of those things where the stakes were so high, you're wondering what's going to happen. Hogan defending his title, Flair putting up the career, and Hogan wins. So good stuff there. We're definitely going to hear about them later in the top 5, just to throw that out there. So now we're looking at maybe a terrible event if you want to really kind of look at it and really think about it. Maybe not the best in the world here. We're talking about the Sumo Monster Truck match, and then we're talking about the Yeti. Of course, it's Monster versus Machine, or Machine versus Machine. Man versus man. We had the monster truck match between Hogan and the Giant, where Hogan knocks the Giant off the building after obviously a lot of stuff with the monster truck and pumping up the monster truck and promoting it that way. And obviously WCW was kind of maybe looking into monster truck toys or sponsoring the monster truck, and obviously that was going to be the sponsors, and they're going to go in that direction with the monster trucks. But still, as a fan, especially watching it then, it was very, very lame. Watch it now, you still think it's lame, but it's just super silly and just so totally crazy and just kind of just not really believable and really just kind of lame as far as what they were doing here with Hogan and the monster trucks and the Giant. The Giant's basically first match after he gets knocked off the damn roof and then still returns. So he got murdered, thrown off the roof, and he returns to the damn show. So silly, so crazy. But that's maybe a different story for a different day as far as analyzing what the hell was going on with that, with him getting thrown off the roof. But he comes back in the contract. If Hogan, basically gets DQ, the Giant wins and wins the title. Jimmy Hart turns. The Giant does defeat Hulk in, of course, crazy circumstances here, becomes the WCW World Heavyweight Champion. The title would get held up after that. But, of course, as you see in the picture, the Yeti, as Tony Schiavone loves to say, he interfered. He came out there and kind of butt-humped the Hulkster with the Giant. You got the double bear hug there. But really, when you think about it, look at it, I don't know what the hell they were going for there. I don't know what the hell they were doing. But you had the monster truck match. You had the Yeti. So you got Machine versus Machine, you got monsters, you get Dungeon of Doom, you got so much silliness. But then in the middle of all that, you kind of have a cool thing with Luger. Is he a face? Is he a heel? He's really playing a really cool character. And you get the return of the Four Horsemen. Sting and Flair teamed up against Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman. Flair turns on Sting, and we get the new Four Horsemen with Flair, Arn, and Pillman. Eventually, they'd add in Benoit and have an awesome run, albeit short one, as the new Four Horsemen. That was one of my favorites. Such a cool Four Horsemen. And it's so funny and so weird. Like, that's so cool. That's so great. That's so gritty. They're doing something, very, very pro wrestling like. And then flip the script, main event. We have a sports entertainment WWF 1980s style, crazy, weird main event with Hogan and Giant. So kind of a best of two worlds, or maybe the best of one world and the worst of another. So really, really weird stuff there in 1995. 1996 was a great one. Love this Halloween Havoc, just awesome. The NWO has basically taken over. They are in full force there. They're all over the night. Malenko Rey Mysterio is great. DDP Eddie Guerrero is great. The Giant Jeff Jarrett's good. Six and Jericho is a good one. Lex Luger and Arn is a good match. The Outsiders and Harlem Heat is a good match. Hogan defeats Macho Man Randy Savage in the main event, the first time they wrestled in WCW one-on-one. So that was awesome, and that was different. And this time, Hogan's a heel and Savage is the babyface. The NWO is in full force. The Giant, of course, helps Hogan defeat Macho Man. Nick Patrick is hilarious as a referee. Match is actually better than what you think, just because the crowd is very, very into it. But that maybe isn't why you remember the pay-per-view. Here we go. Hogan and Roddy Piper with the face to face. Just unbelievable what this did for not only WCW, because this just skyrocketed everything. I mean, NWO was awesome. WCW is kicking WWF's ass. You add in Piper to the mix, especially Piper as the babyface and obviously Hollywood Hogan as the cheating heel, and they were off to the races. And 2 years of dominance, basically. And it kind of all really sparked, obviously, by Hogan and NWO, but further helped with the spark with the addition of Piper and this promo. If you've never seen it, go out of your way to see it. They are shooting on each other, and they actually go so long the pay-per-view's ending, which is awesome to me because it's like, well, this isn't scripted. These guys are talking for however long they want. This is so cool. And they had to cut it, which was awesome that WCW would do that. It's like, oh, well, we got to go. Tune into Nitro to see what the hell's going on with Hogan and the debuting Roddy Piper. So cool with the bagpipes and Hogan being shocked and the shoot promo and them going back and forth. Just love it. You will be hearing more about this later, that's for sure, as far as Hogan and Piper. This was an awesome moment. NWO dominance maybe taking a hit here with Piper showing up. It was just really one of those cool moments you didn't see coming, unpredictable as hell. Hogan beats Savage. You think the NWO is on top of the world, and his biggest mortal enemy comes and basically says, I'm the only guy you've never been able to beat. Great stuff there from Hogan and Piper at the end of Halloween Havoc 96. What a shocker, too, to do that at the end of a pay-per-view. Just unbelievable. Such a cool moment. All right, 1997 is up next. This is an interesting one because it was headlined by Hogan and Roddy Piper in the cage. Obviously, not that great of a cage match. Kind of more memorable for the fact that it was the fake Sting guy that came in as a fan. Was that a real fan? But Macho Man obviously beat the living hell out of him. Who knows? Piper beats Hogan in that cage match. And it's one of those things where, not a great cage match, but the crowd was into it. Cool finish with Savage coming off top of the cage, although that kind of more or less kind of ended his career because he hurt his knee really bad doing that. But then, of course, they tie Piper at the end. They beat the living hell out of him. That was cool. But the great thing about this pay-per-view, Hennig and Flair is pretty good for the most part. Jericho Ghetto is pretty good. Yuji Nagata against Ultimo Dragon is pretty good. Luger and Hall, it's fine. You got the Zbyszko, it's more of a storyline thing. But Macho Man versus DDP in the Las Vegas Sudden Death match was great. Awesome match, awesome feud. Feud of the year, 1997. They're just awesome stuff there. But match of the night and probably match of the year was Title versus Mask Cruiserweight Championship match. One of the all-time greats. Should be a 5-star match, is a 5-star match to me. Rey Mysterio Jr. defeating Eddie Guerrero for the Cruiserweight Championship. One of the greatest matches in wrestling history, one of the greatest matches in WCW history. If you have not seen it, go out of your way to see it. That is awesome. And basically, to me, makes Halloween Havoc 97 a must-watch and definitely a top 5 good moment. We'll get to that in a second, but that's just one of those things where 100% unbelievable match. If you haven't seen it, you need to. If you're a wrestling fan, you have to go see Eddie and Rey. Unbelievable match, unbelievable chemistry, great job, and of course, Rey Mysterio, like I mentioned, does get the victory there. Then, of course, let's go to 1998. Man, this was a crazy card and a crazy night. When you actually look at this card of Halloween Havoc 1998. It is arguably the most stacked wrestling card of all time. You could make the argument for it, that's for sure. Let's just throw it out there. Jericho versus Raven. I mean, that's pretty good. I know there's some jobber matches in between, and then there's some other matches where you want to say, not really jobber matches, but like TV matches. They didn't really need to be on the pay-per-view. I know Disco and Hoovy was good, and I know Kidman versus Disco was good, and you talk about that. But, I mean, you got – as far as star power is concerned, I know that maybe the matches didn't equal up to what they should have or didn't add up to maybe what we wanted them to, but let's just look at star power-wise. Rick versus Scott Steiner, Hall versus Nash, Bret Hart versus Sting, Hogan versus Warrior, Goldberg versus DDP. I mean, you got kind of more or less 5 main event matches, kind of in a row to end the show. Pretty remarkable, pretty amazing. Obviously, Steiner versus Steiner is not what we want it to be. Hall versus Nash, not what we wanted it to be. Bret and Sting, maybe not as good as they've had in other matches. Hogan and Warrior, obviously, we know how much of a cluster that was. The crowd was into it at first, but then it kind of gets a cluster. The fireball doesn't work. The Horace Hogan shot to the back with the chair is the finish. That was kind of lame. And then, of course, Warriors has said, wow, the only reason I was really there wasn't really to make money, but so Hogan could get his win back from WrestleMania 6. Not sure if that's true, but that's definitely one of those things where it kind of makes sense in a certain way, in a certain light, that's for sure. But that match definitely would go on the bad list, and we'll get to that in a second, but that would definitely go on the bad list. That was not good at all. But as far as the main event was concerned, this shockingly, I know in some cable systems they thought it was the main event, and that went off air after that. But the real main event of the show was an awesome match and one of Goldberg's best matches. Goldberg versus Diamond Dallas Page. Goldberg, of course, remained undefeated and retained his WCW title, basically like an 11-minute match, but it's just a great match. Go out of your way to see Goldberg versus DDP. A little bit of a different side of Goldberg there. You thought DDP might go over, but Goldberg gets the big win for the retainment of the WCW World Heavyweight title. So let's talk top 5 good, top 5 bad, and the top 5 most memorable. Let's run it back here, folks. Let's talk about it. Let's go the top 5 bad first, and in no particular order, but I will go basically year by year here in some sort of order. Let's talk Black Scorpion from the 1990 Havoc. Then let's go to 1991. And we're going to go Chamber of Horrors. Then let's go 1992. Let's go the Coal Miners Glove match. So 3 years in a row, 90, 91, 92, getting 3 spots here on the top 5. Then, of course, have to be the Yeti / the Monster Trucks in Halloween Havoc 1995. It's being basically the number 4 spot there for the Havoc. I got to put this back up. Just absolutely terrible here with the Yeti and the Monster Trucks and all that nonsense. So that you knew that was going to make the list. That just had to have made the list there. And of course, last but not least, Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior from 1998. So there you go, top 5. Black Scorpion, Chamber of Horrors, Coal Miner's Glove as far as spin the wheel, make the deal, the Yeti and the Monster Trucks, and then 5 was Hogan Warrior. Terrible. Good. Let's go good. 1989, let's do the Thunderdome Cage. Sting and Flair defeating Funk and Great Muta. So 89 Thunderdome would definitely be on the top 5 good. Then 1993, the Texas Death Match between Big Van Vader and Cactus Jack. Vader gets the win there. That is undoubtedly a top 5 moment for Halloween Havoc. Then let's go to 1994, the retirement match / cage match between Hogan and Flair. Hogan gets the win over Flair there. Then another top 5 good, 1996, the NWO Running Wild and Roddy Piper's WCW debut. And then, of course, last but certainly not least, 1997 would be in my top 5 good because of Macho Man Randy Savage versus DDP and match of the year, one of the greatest matches of all time, Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio Jr. Now, as far as top 5 most memorable, that doesn't necessarily mean good, doesn't necessarily doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It's just top 5 most memorable. The Black Scorpion, Chamber of Horrors, Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal, the Yeti and those Monster Trucks, and of course Hogan Piper in the NWO from 1996. So let's wrap this bad boy up and head towards the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Check out the website patreon.com/TMPT Empire. If you want to buy some merch, go to TeePublic, tpublic.com/store/TMPT and get your TMPT gear as well as some of your Hogan era gear as well. Also check out the Dashery site as well, twomanpowertrip.dashery.com. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. See you right back here next time for the Two Man Power Trip. Have a good one.